Welcome to the Electorate. I am your host, Ian West. On today's episode, we have Emma Mont and Memes from Organizer Memes. Guys, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Great to be here.
So we're going to start off and just kind of do a brief overview of you guys. So for our listeners who don't know much about Organizer Memes, can you guys let us know a bit more about your team, some of your accomplishments, and kind of what your goals are with Organizer Memes?
You start.
Okay. I was going to let you start. Yeah, so we are a meme page on Twitter. Like, that's kind of how it started. But we do a little bit more than that these days. We kind of talk, and we talk about working in politics as two kind of low to mid-level political professionals, although we started as low-level professionals in this space, kind of giving an honest perspective on what all this means, what it is to work for people that espouse pro-labor, pro-democrat ideals, and then act behind closed doors in the opposite ways. But also, I think it's kind of transitioned to something bigger. We've kind of became I like to say like a bulletin board for like the progressive movement. Okay. I think that there's very few places where people can honestly connect without kind of risking their jobs and their livelihoods by being honest. And so we let people anonymously send in things, questions, comments, concerns, stories. And then also, I think on top of that, we've kind of become I don't know how to exactly describe it, but kind of a chaotic imp in the space, kind of pushing bad people to mess up. Emma, do you have...
Yeah, we're not journalists, so we don't have the same kind of journalistic integrity, but we don't act in bad faith. We just act... Yes. The only people who get us in bad faith are people who came to us in bad faith. Sure. So we get to kind of give as much realness as we want without kind of having to live up to the New York Times standards or even we can kind of say, this is what we've heard. We put our hands up if we're wrong, but you should know we're a good version of a gossip blog. Yeah. We take gossip from whoever has it and we kind of try and share it. Oh, sorry, my cat's going a little crazy over here today. And we give, I hate saying like we give a voice to the voiceless, but we kind of give a voice to the voiceless on the internet in a way. And we just kind of have acted for each other as we're therapists, we're career guides for the internet. So it's been a fun kind of therapeutic place to be the past couple of years, while also knowing we're helping ourselves, keep ourselves sane and helping other people.
And also, like, we've become, like, strategists and consultants along with it, because I think that's one of the things that we've kind of seen is, like, oh, we are actually way better at talking online, especially towards young people, towards the progressive wing, although I think, if you talk to certain progressives, they won't agree with you on that.
Sure.
But, if you ask certain progressives anything, they'll disagree with you on anything.
Very good at that.
Yeah, we've become very good at critique, it's turned out, and less so at taking power.
Yeah.
But I think, like, that's the other part of it is, too, like, we've adopted the Markey campaign and Ossoff and several kind of progressive groups and several people that you might not know because they lost. And Anderson Clayton. And, like, we've kind of taken what we want the Democratic Party to actually look like, and looked like, and showed what looking showed what standing effectively or with with an internet presence looks like.
Right. Is there a way to ethically stand politicians? If so, we've done it.
Yeah.
And also, I think it is the information era. People don't know what you aren't putting in front of them, and I think that this election really validated a lot of it was a horrible election that destroyed us. But I think the idea that you have to be reaching people where they're at, and you have to be using internet platforms and all these things that kind of we've been saying, unfortunately, were validated.
Yeah, so that, ultimately kind of takes me to the next question. It's about that very thing. So there's been a lot of sort of post-mortem and on the 2024 election and how Democrats, particularly the Harris campaign, kind of utilized media and how it was a failure, how she didn't go on this podcast or didn't do this or and I've been not necessarily critical, but you can view it and see areas for improvement in a changing media landscape. Where do you guys see that improvement for Democrats moving forward? Where do you, because you guys run obviously a page that is very kind of new media driven. Memes are 100% a way of communicating with people in a humorous way that also pushes forth, policy positions. It holds people accountable. It's not just, it's not just for laughs. There's actually something behind it. So where do you think that we can improve there?
So,
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
And funny enough, I think part of the change that has to happen has to not just come from the capital D Democrats, but the people who say they are also a capital D Democrat.
Yeah.
In the past couple days, we've had a lot of not to bring up the TikTok ban, but we have had a lot of people in our mentions on Twitter telling us how talking about the TikTok ban in the way that we're talking about it, which is critical of both just critical of everyone who is against the ban. That is our position, regardless of party.
Yep.
Critical of people that are for the ban, just to clarify.
Yes, sorry. We're pro ban. I mean, we're pro TikTok. We are pro TikTok. We are anti TikTok ban because
TikTok needs to be fixed, but you are pro keeping TikTok in the United States and usable.
Correct.
Yeah.
In the last couple days, as all of this has been happening, we've had people in our mentions be really, really critical of us talking about the ban and the implications and what it means for young people and what it means for Democrats. And the tone that has been used to tell us how we're wrong is the problem.
That's stupid.
It's bad.
It's not just that we're wrong, it's that they think that we are horrible people that are stupid.
Yep.
For even talking about any way that the Democrats haven't been perfect.
Yeah.
And I think that that's one of the things is Emma's just started this, but there is a faction of the party that is really, really defensive.
Yeah.
In a way that we need to be hearing criticisms all the time.
Yes.
Yep.
Is it always effective to hear criticisms 3 days before the election? No. Are all the people criticizing us in good faith? No.
Right.
But being the party that can't take a joke, that can't take some level of hey, I'm upset that I'm seeing dead children on my timeline day after day.
Yep.
And the bombs are coming from our country. And then you're getting people being well, why are you protesting Trump? It's fuck off, first of all.
Right.
Yeah.
But also, you actually do have to convince a lot of people every election that we are the better side. And especially if we aren't able to convince them on the merits of the policies that we've passed and the things we've done. But and we've talked about how no one knows any of the good things Biden did. And I think we have that's one of the things is one of the places we go wrong is that we expect that everyone just stops doing politics between the day after the election and 6 months before the next one. And that's not how Ben Shapiro works.
No.
That's not how any of these right-wing grifters work.
Yeah.
They are outrage machines all year round, and that's what we do too.
Yeah.
We talked about the infrastructure bill. right?
Yeah.
We were making memes about why that was good year round. And like,
Yeah.
that's one of the things I think is really critical is like, and I think that's one of the problems with how the money is set up in
Yeah.
this system.
Yes.
Is like, it's not a year round project,
Yeah.
but also I really don't think people understand that like people's political views are not static.
Yes. And I think we really try and like lean into that. And I like people always say like nuance on the internet is dead, and they're mostly right. But I think we really do try and like we as organizer memes really try to live with nuance. Like
For sure.
a lot of people back to it's like, oh, everybody's so upset about TikTok, but no one's talking about the Lake and Riley Act, and no one's talking about the mass deportations that are going to start, and no one's protesting. And it's like, I mean, we're trying.
Yeah.
One, we are talking about those things, but we're also we're online Twitter meme page. TikTok is more our beat. Like if we were to have a beat, it would be that. But we talk about all of these things all the time.
Right.
And I think that there is a part of the Democratic Party that has decided that nuance is dead, and they're not going to even try and engage with it. And I think it's better to try and fail than not try at all.
Yeah.
Well, it's not that they fail to engage with it. It's that they think that like it's a tribalism thing.
Yeah.
And I think like what we saw with like the switch between Biden and Harris, like people were calling people that were calling for the switch like sexist and racist.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Which I don't understand how.
It's like, wait, replacing a white man with the potentially first woman
How?
of like black woman, first East Asian woman, that's
Fucking
racism?
how? Yeah.
What?
Yeah. I
And
mean,
it wasn't good faith. And that's I think
Yeah.
one of the things is people understand when you're actually trying to bullshit them.
yeah.
And that's one of the things I think memes are so good about is
Yeah.
like a meme isn't funny if it's not hitting at something
Sure.
like more deeply true.
Yeah.
And there's like this authenticity thing. I think, and that's one of the things we always talk about in terms of who actually does well online is like at least on the Dem side, because the Republican side is, I'm not going to get into, but like it really is like, why did Markey and Bernie and some of these people do so well? It's because you knew exactly who that person was.
Yeah.
And then they signaled in their messaging exactly that same person.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's that disconnect when, you know, you have, and we talk about this one all the time, but like, I'm sorry, your 85-year-old male congressman isn't tweeting out Taylor Swift lyrics.
Yeah.
That's, you know.
Right.
Unless he said Markey.
Right.
But even then, it's like, you know, you have to do that with a like level of understanding that like, that's like, and you can make those tweets. Like,
Sure.
I'm pro having a digital director that like gets it. Working for someone that doesn't.
Yeah.
But like, you can't be like, you know, boots the house down, and
Right.
it's like, you know,
Yeah.
Jack Smith's Twitter account.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's got to be grounded. It's got to be at least, you know, trying to be in their voice. It's got to be something that seems like it's actually coming from them.
Right.
And that's the problem, I think, is that a lot of these people are actually just very boring people.
Sure.
And so to speak in their voice, unfortunately, would be
Not fun.
incredibly bad
A
content.
detriment.
Yeah.
And that's the other problem is that we don't have enough young people actually like
Yeah.
that are able to talk.
For sure.
Well, I was going to say, I think it's the reason why someone like AOC really stands out, because when she goes on Instagram Live and is like, I'm not going to the inauguration because I don't celebrate rapists, the end, good night. Like, it really stands out because that's her. And there's no doubt in your mind that that's her. So when she does her Q&As and just kind of riffs, when she goes on Twitch, you believe it. And so we don't need more people behaving like her. We need more people that it would make sense to behave like her.
100% agree, because you look at her, Instagram live or reels or anything that she posts, and whether you agree with it or not, you know that it's actually coming from her. You know that's her belief, and she's messaging it in a way that is genuine to who she is. And I don't agree with AOC sometimes, but I think she's probably the most authentic and best messenger that we have in the party right now. And we need more people like that. But like you said, it can't be fake. It can't be inauthentic. It can't, we don't need people who aren't AOC trying to be AOC. Be yourself, whatever that is, and let's see if that works.
Exactly.
And that doesn't mean you can't take lessons from that.
Yeah.
Right? I think that some people are actually good at being inauthentically interesting. I think Trump is a great example of that. But that's a lot harder, I think, than just being authentic.
Yeah, to actually do it in a way that's meaningful and comes, and you see it on the right wing side without getting too much into it. But the people that try to copy Trump, basically be a carbon copy of him, it just doesn't come off. It doesn't work, and they've had a very low success rate in a lot of elections. So, Trump, for whatever he is, it works for him, but it's not something that's going to work for everybody.
Yeah,
I also think the authentic person that you are has to be someone people like as well.
Yeah.
I think one of the most authentic candidates we've seen is Mark Robinson.
Right.
Yeah.
That guy was truly unabashedly himself.
Put it all out there.
Oh yeah. I mean,
too much out there.
Right here in North Carolina, I know all about him.
Yeah.
So like that, I mean, 100%. He's one of those ones that, a lot of other things going on in his past, but he's one of those ones that, he was basically a carbon copy of Trump, but somehow maybe even actually politically worse. And it was just awful. I mean, people saw right through it, but still, even still, he got over 40% of the vote in the state. And you're just like, what? How? Imagine if all that stuff had not come out, and, that race would have been extremely close. And all the shit that he said before the whole, online message board and all that came out, he was still just a dreadfully bad person. Yeah. And it was still not polling poorly. That's just crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I saw something that the polling didn't shift at all after the scandal, but I could be wrong on that.
It was so. I think immediately after, people jumped to release some polls that said there was a 5 to 6 point swing, but then a week later it came back and it was basically exactly where it was. He was making, at the time, he was making gains. So Mark Robinson was closing the gap a little bit on Stein. That stopped the gap closing, but it didn't have a negative impact. It didn't take him down. So it was a little embarrassing to be a North Carolinian at that point. But so kind of shifting gears here a little bit, but on the same vein, there was an obvious shift in Gen Z towards Trump, or, you could say even maybe just away from the Democratic Party as a whole, something that's been going on. What do you think contributed to this the most? And with that in mind, what can we do to bring them back?
It's hard because it's a lot of things. I want to, it goes back pretty far. I feel like the pandemic and kind of the recovery from it and the way that it feels like things have not gotten back to normal and we're being told they're gone back to normal. And it's kind of like a slow building of, we are a generation that has seen less positive gains. And in fact, as a woman of Gen Z, I have seen direct negative gains in my rights as an American citizen. And it's not that I think some people are just moving more to the right, but I do think you're right that it's well, I'm a young woman, I'm 27, and I have potentially less access to abortion rights than my mom, who is a boomer. Something's wrong here. It's one of the, so it's not that I understand. I would never, but I understand why people no longer want to engage in American politics. If that's the world you're living in, I get why you'd stay home. I don't want you to, but I get it.
Yeah, you can at least understand.
There's also, I think that there's different Gen Z groups They're moving for different ways. I think a lot of Gen Z is really oppositional.
Yeah.
And I think it makes sense based on where we are and what is going on in the world. And,
Yeah.
Also just like young people don't like being told what to do ever.
Yeah.
True.
But like, I think that like there was I think having an incumbent in power was going to hurt us regardless is part of it. In a way that like, I don't know if there is an incumbency a benefit ever again. Like, that's one of the things is like, yes, there is an incumbency benefit historically, but also historically people have felt like the world was going to get better.
Yeah.
And like things were somewhat improving.
Yeah.
Versus in a world where like I genuinely am terrified about the ecological future of our planet and like
So not to interrupt, but I love that point right there, and I kind of want to flesh that out just a little bit more. So I have kind of I don't know if it's not exclusive to me, but a sort of a theory that the incumbency advantage is sort of dying off, particularly at the highest level because of social media, and because social media sort of has created what is basically outrage culture, or kind of like a new counterculture, I guess you would say. So do you guys see that as well? Do you think this is something that the incumbency advantage is gone because there's so much just outrage on social media pointing to at whatever is going? And for sure, this last election, inflation took basically took victims across the entire world when it came to the incumbent. I think maybe only Claudia Sheinbaum was the one who maintained the party's incumbency advantage. But do you guys see that too? Do you think that's a salient theory?
Absolutely. I think
we
so.
post so much positive stuff that gets no views.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess not that much positive stuff because
There's
but like
not.
it's just the internet has become for call out culture. And also I think like makes that makes it seem like so evil, but like a lot of it is just like complaining. Like, right? Like one of the things that memes do so well and why they work is it's like, oh yes, like if you don't have any, if you see a meme and it's talking about an experience that you don't feel or you can't empathize with, it doesn't work. Like it is relatable humor, in a new format.
And I think the only way around this kind of decline in incumbency, the power of incumbency, is to have like a really powerful incumbent in a way that Democrats just like, we need like an FDR level in order to kind of overcome it in a way that I don't know that Democrats are like emotionally equipped for right now. Like, it just feels like we as a party, there's that Simpsons meme that goes around all the time. It's like, we're Democrats, we hate ourselves, we can't govern. And I hate it, but it's kind of true. Like, I think the only way to get around the fact that people that outrage culture kind of runs politics in a way is to give no reason for outrage, which is a really tall task. But
it's almost impossible.
It's also like, I think we did really good in 2022 of being the outrage party in power.
Yeah.
Right? It was like, fuck these guys that are taking away our rights. Like, and like that's part of it is I don't think we were good at hitting Trump. I think we were good at hitting Vance. I think we were good at hitting a bunch, Carrie Lake and Mark Robinson and like all these people. And then like when it actually came to like, there was no real like grab her by the pussy moment or any of those things. And like, who knows at this point whether that would have mattered, because I think people knew who Trump was. And I think that's one of the reasons why we thought we shouldn't. But like, no, people weren't angry at Trump because what had Trump done recently?
Right.
He was just a dude at that point that was like saying stupid things. And like, I mean, the Haitian thing is actually, I think, one of the perfect examples of where we went wrong. And I don't think that it was like intentionally by any one person, but like that became an online joke. And like, that is bad. Like, It's actually not funny.
No.
It's actually like
very fucking serious.
It's like it has deathly implications.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if we had put on every channel Haitian leaders
Yeah.
that were like crying and upset about the literal like violence that was being perpetrated against their community, instead of like, isn't Trump so funny when he's racist?
And like remixing songs from it. And, like, just come on. It's not a fucking joke. Like these are real people that could undergo some serious harm.
Schools had to close for bomb threats. Like, it was really scary.
And so, like, that's, I think, part of it is, like, the enemy is so evil that you have to figure out how to, like, not just be like, okay, everything is evil.
Yeah.
Right.
The other thing, I think, in terms of the generational thing is, and I'll say this, because Emma brought up being a woman, like, there is a real... I have a lot of guy friends that kind of fit into that, like, apathetic dude vibe. And I love them to death because they're my friends, but, like, they don't know what the IRA is.
Yeah.
They don't know any of this stuff, but they do know that they lost $500 on sports gambling last week.
Yeah.
And while they don't view that as their own personal problem, then when they look at their bank account and it's in the red, it's like, Joe Biden done for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But more than just that, though, like, there is not a clear pathway. And I think there's no clear pathway for Gen Z, period. But I think as a dude, like, especially if you look at the education rates, if you look at kind of where the trajectory of, like, young men in this country is going, and this transcends race and class, but there just isn't a clear, like, okay, like, where, like, besides for a bar, where do you meet up with your friends?
Yeah.
Besides for video games, like,
Yeah.
where are you talking? Like, young women, I think, have built a much more, like, robust social system
Out of necessity.
for sure. And, like, I'm not saying that, like, young women are to blame. I think, like, there's a lot of lessons that Gen Z men need to learn from Gen Z women. And also, I think, like, I know so many of my friends that have, like, never been on a date.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And are, like, terrified of, like,
but
the
it's our
entire
fault.
concept. What?
But so not, I'm sure not your friends, but then but then it's our women's fault that they have never been on a date.
Yeah, that becomes the discourse. That's how you get the whole fucking Nick Fuentes, like, you know, that sort of culture. It becomes
Sure, but and, like, that's the problem is, like, that's the only people talking to those people and explaining why that's going wrong, as opposed to, oh, there's no third spaces.
Yeah.
Right? And, like, oh, historically men have been really bad, and therefore you have to, like, show a different form of masculinity to be getting these dates.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
There's not a social hall where we all go dancing and you can meet someone and know, like, he's there with his friends. Maybe I'm going to ask his friend if he's nice, and his friend will say yes because we're all at the dance hall together.
Yeah. I mean, it just gets lonelier and lonelier, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you, like, you know, and we're online all the time, but, like, we're online with a community.
Yeah.
And our community is, like, relatively kind and relatively good. If you're just, like, on, you know, a League of Legends Discord channel where people are calling you slurs all day.
Yeah.
And it's all men. I mean, that's the thing that's so crazy is, like, these gaming spaces are, like, 80 to 90% men.
Oh, yeah.
And then they're like, why can't I talk to women? And it's like,
Have
you
have
no
tried?
experience doing so.
Have you tried?
Yeah, the answer is no, they haven't.
But, like, there's no one, like, there's so many manosphere blogs and manosphere content creators that are explaining, like, here's how to be a real man. And there's no, like, left, like, I think Tim Walz was, like, a good example.
Yeah.
Way too late.
Yeah.
And I know that people are now anti-Walz, but, like, I think, like, we need to be showing what, like, a different form of masculinity looks like.
Yeah.
Like, and not 3 days before the election.
Right.
Yeah.
The anti-Walz discourse just popped up over the last couple of weeks. It's so fucking ridiculous. I mean, Yeah, I'll be one to tell you, I think he was underutilized. I don't
Hell
think they
yeah.
did enough with him to get the most out of him. Why do you pick him if you're just going to nerf him and set him on the sideline? I thought
I
that was
also
ridiculous.
don't think that that's even that true. I think as someone, okay, I was on the campaign, so maybe I'm just being defensive,
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
but like he was doing things all day, every day.
Yeah,
And he was meeting, like, one of the places we put him a ton was like male influencers. And like, not that that always went perfectly,
Mhm.
but I think the reason this Discord exists is the people that commentate on politics aren't watching
Yeah.
the places he was going.
yeah.
And like, but also like they weren't getting traction.
So do
Yeah.
you think the wrong places were chosen, or do you think it was just ignored? So one of the things that I really liked is he released that YouTube video where he's just sitting there, working on his old pickup truck and just talking to the camera. Like I thought that was really, for me, that seemed to resonate. That was really cool. I have an old pickup truck myself. I thought that was awesome. I do the same shit. But I did find later, it was days later, and usually I'm very on top of like where each candidate is, what they're appearing on that day and stuff. I did find certain instances like that where I didn't realize Tim Walz had made an appearance until 2 or 3 days after the fact, and I saw some clips. Do you think the wrong outlets were chosen, or what do you think resulted in that not really getting the coverage or getting picked up like it normally, what you would think?
I think that like the issue is, I mean, I think there's a lot of issues, and I think, but like, I think really the issue, at least partially, was like the news and like talking head class wasn't
Traditional media.
watching kind of, when we went on an influencer, like a kind of male leaning influencers thing, like that's not what they're watching, right? Like, and I think like it's all these people that are super politically engaged being like, why didn't he message more towards me?
Yeah.
And it's like, you fool.
Yeah.
Like, that's not at all who we need to be messaging to.
No.
And so maybe the fact that you didn't see some of this stuff was actually part of the solution.
Sure.
Yeah.
And not that I think that he could have been more utilized and gone on to higher level things. The other problem was like, a lot of the biggest people in the spaces that we need to be reaching didn't want us on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also think, not to criticize my former employers, but like, it was one of the most risk-averse campaigns I've ever worked.
Sure.
And I saw a TikTok about it, like, Trump doesn't care if he goes on an interview and fucks it up and gets bad headlines.
Not at all.
He at least went on the thing.
Yep.
Versus it was like, people were scared of one gaffe
Yeah.
Trump is
so much.
he is a man. He is a New Yorker of the 80s. He firmly believes that all press is good press, even bad press. And
Yep.
like, whether you agree with that or not, I think there's something there. I also think part of the kind of Tim Walz, as someone who was not on the campaign, is I wanted him to also get to do the big rallies that Harris got to do. Like, I know a lot of people who went to North Carolina to see her. I know people like, I would have traveled like that for him. It's just like, I think he didn't get to do enough. It wasn't that he got like pushed aside. I think he didn't get to do enough. And what he did do didn't get enough attention.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, back to kind of the previous point. So part of the reason, would you agree that the campaign was maybe a little risk averse was because, so obviously Kamala takes over with 107 days before. So and there's tons of polling data that shows people need to know more about her, don't know her very well, all this stuff, and you're kind of already behind the 8 ball. You're already behind the gun here. So do you think that they're risk averse because when you're in that position and you've got a short time frame to make an impression, that one really bad soundbite could possibly sink you?
I think that doesn't hurt. I think more the people that were making very high level decisions on the campaign felt burned already.
Okay.
And I think had been managing a candidate previously that was much more risk he to put on things. And we saw at the debate, like, had a career-ending mishap. And then and then they felt, and then also, like, the campaign, a lot of the people felt that was not fair. And that the media and the party betrayed Biden. And, like, I don't feel that way. But
no.
But also, like, I came onto the campaign as probably one of the least, like, Biden-Harris stands on the campaign. Like, these were and plenty of really good, smart people who, like, really genuinely, like, owe a lot to the Biden-Harris administration.
Sure.
And that's not a bad thing. You want on your campaign to have the true believers.
For sure.
But also, like, I think those people then saw the favorite person of theirs in the entire world be shivved by their party and got very, like, well, like, the media and the party is out to get us.
Yes.
Or, like, they won't be fair. And part of it is, you're right, they won't be fair.
Right.
But also, like, at some point it doesn't matter.
And so that kind of speaks to, like, I, Emma Mont, have decided that the biggest reason, in my opinion, that we lost was the timing. I think a lot of other things that went wrong are a symptom of the timing. I think you can kind of attribute a lot of things in the end that went wrong to the shortness of the campaign. And I just think that, in the end, 107 days is not enough time to run a winning presidential campaign. You could have run the best campaign possible. And I think they did. I don't know if it was the best, but I think it was one of the best they could have done in the situation. I do think 107 days is never enough time. And so whatever, like, that's kind of where any other reason you can think of, a lot of them come down to the fact that 107 days is just not enough time.
Yeah, and I watched the interview that like Jen O'Malley Dillon and David Plouffe did with Pod Save America and sort of another postmortem, but and I expressed some frustration at the time that there seemed to be not a lot of, like, accepting of, hey, we should have done this better, or we could have done this better, or anything like that. And, they just kept kind of coming back to that, 107 days, 107 days, 107 days. And of course, that is a huge part of it. Right. And you can look at the polling data and you can see that they closed a lot of gaps in a lot of places and did a lot of things right in order to do that. But I think you're 100% right. So many of the things that, quote unquote, went wrong with the campaign was just because of the time frame that they had to work in. You have to do that. You have to get everything perfect. You can't miss.
I also think part of the reason that interview in particular got a lot of pushback is, like, I can say it was the timing because I didn't decide the timing. In fact, I watched the debate with Biden and I said, brother, it's time to go.
Yep.
They are the people who did have some impact on the timing. They are the people who had the most, or if they had no impact on the timing, they had the most kind of direct impact on what happens next.
Sure.
So I think a lot of the, like, we all can say it was the timing, but if you ran the campaign, you also have to say what the other things that the timing then caused. I get to say it's all timing, but you now have to be accountable for the rest because you were there.
Yeah.
I think a primary would have been so good for a couple of reasons. One, she would have had to actually have policies.
Yep.
Like, that was one of the things. We didn't have a platform going into convention.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, like, what am I messaging? We didn't have polling going into convention. We had a team of people that weren't her people. They were Biden's people. Like, if she had to I think she would have won a primary.
I do too.
Very easily.
For sure.
I don't really see, unless there was some huge calamity.
Yeah.
Like, I don't see the Democratic Party a year ago not voting for her if Biden had stepped down. But, like, she would have had to have done the polling on what she was, like, she would have had to build a brand much earlier. And I also think one of the things is, like, I think she was sandbagged earlier on in the administration. Why would you possibly give someone you want to potentially lead after you immigration?
Yeah.
Right? Like, that to me is not, like, I think there's this weird thing with the VP thing at this point where you don't want to choose someone that will overshadow you and you don't want to give someone the opportunity to primary you. which I think is one of the reasons that Shapiro didn't get the pick. I mean, I think there were other reasons, and I agree with Walz being the person, but like, it's this weird, like, you don't want to choose someone that could also win, but then they need to win if you aren't the person.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, this could have been the last 4 years a resume builder for Harris, right?
Yeah.
Especially with a candidate or with a president that was busy and older.
Yeah.
Like, she should have been going on the news as his top surrogate every day, and then people would have known who she was.
This should have been the game plan from basically the moment he took office.
And to be honest, as a voter in 2020, I thought it was.
So did I. That's what I thought. I mean, I thought this was a stopgap. I thought he was the one that could beat Trump right now, and then it was going to be handed off to somebody else.
Yeah. And I think that's
that
part.
was my thought.
I do, and I think that's enough. Again, can attribute to the time frame. Another reason I think that even people like I voted not happily in 2020. But I voted in 2020 because I knew that we would have another turn in 2024.
Yeah. And to clarify, you voted this time as well.
Yes, I did vote. I voted this time as well.
We always vote. So we covered basically all the topics I had here, kind of intermingled throughout this, which is great. I do want to ask one more, based on your previous comments about a primary. Do you see, so you do a blitz primary, obviously it's got to be quick. You do a lot of things. Do you see that? So we already talked about 107 days. That time frame gets even shorter from that point. Do you think that causes even more issues? Because I agree, I would have liked to see somebody rise to the top and really show off. But do you think that really would have hampered the campaign even more?
I don't think we should have done a primary in the same situation that that all this is happening over the summer. I think we only do a primary if Joe Biden decides not to run at least the beginning of 2024. I think to do it later, I think the way we did it now was the only way to do it with the timing.
That being said, I think one thing that I kept hearing from people that were much lower information voters is the fact that there was no votes cast.
Yeah.
Was part of why people felt weird, but also people would have felt weird had just like the elites of the party been like, this is who our president is now.
Sure.
I think that's one of the things I think I'm taking away from this is like people want to feel democracy.
Yeah.
And I think like RFK Jr., one of our main targets, like ran as a Democrat this election cycle.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's kind of wild that he's now, a Republican, like
going to be in this
administration member.
Mm-hmm.
But like the way that primary went, and I think it's one of the places that we probably maybe
we disagree on this, and we interpersonally disagree on this, which is
like,
good.
I don't think that it like. I think that the people really don't like coronations. And I think that's one of the problems we had in 2016 as well, where when people think, oh, the elites of the party chose this person, they're a lot less likely to support that person. Versus, I think, like, Biden in 2020, I mean, there's definitely lefties that are like, it was rigged because people dropped out, but, like, he still won.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
whether we like it or not.
He gave everyone a chance to see if they could be, and he was like, okay, no.
Yeah, the South Carolina of it all was pretty clear that no one had it. But also, I mean, like, no.
Shall we rehash the 2020 primary again?
I feel like better than 2016, but not much.
Yeah.
But I think that to the RFK Jr. point of it all, yes, people don't want to feel like it was a coronation, but I also don't think to say the primary in 2024 between Dean Phillips, Marianne Williamson, RFK, like that's not a real Democratic primary either. And I think other than the most kind of low antagonistic voters, like most people I know, even lower information than I am, kind of looked at that and said, so there's no other option. Like this isn't a real primary.
Yeah.
So I think, we really went after Marianne Williamson and RFK Jr. I think correctly, because I'm not entertaining two cranks. I'm not entertaining two crazy people. If we had a genuine primary and then we had really kind of gone after one of those candidates, maybe then I would say like, okay, did we go too far? But I don't
like. And not to disagree with you ever, Emma, because you're always right, and so maybe I should just stop talking.
They're not serious people.
But like the fact that there weren't any serious people,
yes,
is symbolic of the fact that I know that like part of that is people are
it was almost self-selecting.
Yeah,
self-selecting, but like if you actually do have a future in the party, running before would have been career suicide, and so like you do have to be smart. But at the same time, then it's like, well, why was no one there? Like, I don't know. It's also usually an incumbent president is not someone you primary.
Yeah.
Right.
I also think that had things shaped up a little bit differently, like, because Biden would have won regardless. And I think it's similarly to 2016, like Hillary would have won regardless if there had been 5 candidates in the race.
Yeah.
But when you actually like give less options, I think
feels gross.
People can consolidate around.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, 1 or 2 main talking points.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, I keep saying this because like so many of the people I know that were Bernie voters that I talked to like in like the Rust Belt after the election were like, yeah, I vote for him because I didn't like Hillary. Mm-hmm. But like, I'm not a socialist and I'm not like, they probably would have loved a Pete or a Cory Booker.
Sure.
And like, I think like that, like clearing the field actually hurts a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But also, who knows? I mean, this is also hard because
I know.
Who was to know that he was going to have the worst debate performance of all time?
Right.
If he'd done somewhat better and not dropped out, like I don't think he would have. I don't think it was looking good either way.
Yeah. I don't think another 4 years of Biden. I don't even think that's possible.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things. It's like I have a lot of respect for Joe Biden. I think he did a lot of really great stuff. But I do think even remotely considering a 2024 run was like, we should have stopped there. The conversation should have stopped before it began.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. He is one of, if not the primary reasons that we're in this spot right now, Trump is being inaugurated today. So, well, all right. Thanks, guys, for coming on. Sorry, it got a little dire there at the end. But that was a really good episode. For anybody that wants to follow Organizer Memes, where can they find you on social media, website, all that?
We're on all of the social medias at Organizer Memes. Our main platform is Twitter, but we're everywhere. Don't worry. We also have a Patreon, Organizer Memes, where you can get some kind of behind the scenes, a little off the cuff content from us, slightly less polished, slightly less formal. Get to see a lot of pictures of my cat. And then we're going to be launching our website soon, which is going to be organizermemes.com. Keep an eye out. So if you want to connect with us, if you like what we do and want to pay us to do it for you, that's an option.
Hire 'em.
Yeah, please do. We need money.
You can reach out to us at organizermemes@gmail.com.
Cool. And you guys want to give Roots Camp a quick shout out?
Yes.
Yes.
Go ahead.
How will you do it?
So I will be there. Roots Camp is going to be February 6th, 7, and 8 in Baltimore. You can go to rootscamp.com. Basically, it's going to be 3 days of panels and networking, get to meet different people, learn different skills. If you listen to this podcast and you said, they're so right, we need young, cool, authentic people, not necessarily, you don't have to be young, but if you say, we need authentic, cool people in politics, and that could be me, but I don't know how to start a fundraising, like, I don't know how to start an Act Blue page, come to Netroots. There are people there who are going to help teach you. There are scholarships available. But yeah, it's going to be a fun time. We're going to learn things and build the future of the party together.
Yeah. So if you want to get involved and you want to know how to do all this stuff and really, really, really help, rootscamp.com. And you said that's the weekend of February 6th, 7th, and 8th, right?
Yep, that's right.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much. All right. Well, Organizer Memes, Emma and Memes, thank you so much for coming on. If you like what you guys listen to, please like, subscribe, share, do all the good stuff, and we will see you next time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.